أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to NJSSL's very own NJSSL Reflections. I'm your host, as usual, Redge, and with me today, I am honored to have the first ever, female NJSSL to be star, with us as a guest today on this show. You may know her from Instagram, from her influencing sessions. You may know her from the poetry that she provides. You also may know her as Redge Sali. But so please welcome the one and only Batool Rizvi. Assalamu alaikum, Batool. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. I'm good. Alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for joining us today on NJSSL Reflections. Has everything been going for you the last several weeks?
It's been good, and thank you for having me. I'm honored. It's such a great initiative that you guys are doing. Um, and yeah, like Muharram suffer, and now like we're just wrapping up like the first 9 days of Rabiul Awwal. It's been good. A lot of like azadari, a lot of majlises. Um,
Yeah, it's
so
been very busy for sure.
yeah,
Sort of the last couple months, as this time of the year usually is.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you're able to take some time out of your busy schedule as an influencer, as an Instagram model or role model, if you will. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but and I just as somebody who obviously has a lot of bigger fish to fry, to join us here at NJSSL Studios.
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule because I know that Muharram has been busy for you too. So
Well,
it's great.
Alhamdulillah, I mean, I feel like certainly all of us, as we've alluded to before on this podcast, find ways to make time for Majlis and just for all the important things in life during Muharram. So one thing I know that you take a lot of time out with is to basically create and uh, kind of popularize the poetry scene during Muharram. So tell me a little bit about kind of what you've been doing on that end, and kind of where that stands just in today's world.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I feel like Muharram especially is like a time where a lot of my creative juices, I guess, are flowing because I'm just like surrounded by so much inspiration, whether that's like lectures and like Molanas, whether that's listening to like the Nohe or the Mercy before and after like a lecture. So um I'm always just surrounded by a lot of great, like I would say creatives in their own ways, like reciters, lecturers, right? But yeah, so usually I feel like I find a lot of inspiration from that, as well as like other podcasts and stuff that, um, are also like relevant to like Muharram. Um, so yeah, I just like to write. Usually like after I like come back from like a majlis or like right before I'm going into a majlis,
Yeah.
and then like figuring out like a creative way to present that on Instagram so that it doesn't really get lost. But regardless, yeah, that's basically what I've sort of been up to for the past like few years in Muharram, and like showcasing that on Instagram.
Yeah. So it's nice to have a little bit of an insider's point of view here. So it sounds like you reflect on what you kind of hear at these different majalis, and whatnot, and you kind of write it and gather your thoughts together, write it down, and then find a way to present that similar information, in like your own creative way. Is there are there any particular group pages on Instagram, or groups is probably an outdated term, but yeah, pages on Instagram that people can follow to get more into the poetry scene?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many poets that I can like shout out here. Um, I would say like some of my biggest influences, specifically like for Shia poetry, Shia English poetry is obviously brother Nuri Sardar. His book is like right there, 14. Also
Nice.
um, another individual who's based in London is brother Tahir Adil, brother Zain Hyderabad. Zane Speaks on Instagram. Sister Abir Safa, Sister Sarah Bukhari. Um,
Lots of
so
lots of lots.
there's mashallah a lot, and if anybody ever wants to have like more recommendations, they can feel free to ask me because I have so many great poets that I can recommend.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I guess tell us a little bit about like how you ended up delving yourself into the poetry scene. Like how did you, become somebody who found inspiration from the alphabet like via poetry and kind of how has that impacted your life?
Yeah, I feel like ever since like a young age, I've just been like going to like the Imam Barga, and I would say that like Muharram specifically, and like the different stories that you hear every night for like the first 10 to 12 days in Muharram, but then also throughout the 2.5 months.
Mhm.
Um, there's so many stories there, and obviously I was born and raised in like uh Indian like or Pakistani like subcontinent, right? So a lot of Urdu poetry
Mhm.
I was raised with, even like reciting Nohe and stuff, in like ladies' majlises. So all of that was like what I was like born and raised with.
Mhm.
Um, and then when it came to like translating that, I guess, into English, my Urdu is obviously not as strong, unfortunately, as my English. So every year, before I even started like an Instagram page, I always wanted to like do something or like write something, like especially for Ashura, like the night before, so on the 9th. Um, whether that was just like a small little like essay or just like personal feelings and stuff like that, and then it eventually turned into poetry. But I would say that I would not have been confident, or I would not have been able to, I guess, like be where I am if it wasn't for the support that I got from my family, my friends, as well as the community. We both went to Rutgers, so
Yeah.
Rutgers ABSA, Illbit Student Association, is very like strong, a formidable force, I would say.
It's,
Mashallah say.
it's probably only gotten more formidable, over with each passing year.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I would say that, like that was definitely a very important community for me at that time and at that place. It was exactly like I guess what I needed.
Mhm.
And the people there were so receptive as well. And my friends on board, um and they really encouraged me. So I remember reciting in front of like probably one of the biggest audiences that I had ever recited at like a Rutgers AFSA event in honor of like the Prophet Muhammad. Um, and ever since then, it's
And
just
getting more and more and bigger and bigger.
Alhamdulillah. So,
Alhamdulillah,
so
that's good. Now,
yeah.
you did mention your family has been a great support. Is there anyone in particular that you might want to point out that's been a great supporter?
Oh my God. No, I mean obviously my parents, my siblings, some my brother-in-laws. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
them.
yeah, well, okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, good, good, good. I'm actually very glad to hear that like the Rutgers atmosphere and like the college atmosphere, as one would expect and as it should, like plays a great role in kind of leading to evolutions within these historically, I guess, both cultural and also just religious, experiences and stuff that we have. I feel like without groups like ABSA and just like these other, groups that are kind of, forming as the years go on and as Shias establish their identity and, their culture and religion within America, groups like ABSA, help it basically take different shape and evolve it and mold it into a greater and much more consumer friendly and easier to swallow kind of um, thing. So I guess like, are there any other like are there other activities besides ABSA or other kind of groups besides ABSA that you've kind of found yourself intertwined with that helps Shias and people your age or maybe even my age to help us kind of get a better understanding of our own identity either through poetry or through other means.
Yeah, so I think you put that so perfectly. But yeah, I would actually shout out three organizations or like initiatives that are doing really great work. The first one would be Marifa programs. That was also like another huge like community that I found myself in during college, like during the end of college. That also gave me like the platform and the space to recite my poetry. The second would be El Bit Collective. They're also a really great organization. They've come out with like zines and they have like open mics. And also, I think they're starting to do in person events. And then, thirdly and lastly, I would plug Space or Shia Professional Association for Creativity and Education. They're sort of like I'm actually part of the board, but it's sort of an organization that is trying to connect and bridge like maybe like the generational gap between like professionals and undergraduate and recent graduate students who are trying to like seek opportunities while also like being creative and having like really cool workshops and having like a career fair. And their second conference is happening in November, inshallah, in Vancouver, Canada. So please, if you're interested in any of that, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to the Instagram page as well. But I think like these sort of organizations, which are very much like youth led and trying to like fill like those gaps that we may see in like our Shia communities, is really important for all of us to support like each and every one of them, especially because it is youth led and it is for the youth.
And most importantly, it encourages careers other than medicine, which is the most important thing in that we all need to support. Um,
Yeah.
but yes, that definitely sounds like it definitely sounds interesting, and it definitely seems like it can only help foster more ways to basically establish that Shia identity that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, let's kind of take that as a segue to our next segment. What I'm interested in knowing is how do all these programs, how does your poetry, how does that allow you, Batool Rizvi, to connect to the Ahl Bayt, right? How has it impacted your life in the positive, in the positive way that I'm sure that you'll be able to tell us how.
Yeah. And also I would, after I finish responding, I would love to also hear your response to this because I know that you recite poetry as well, or
No,
recite
sorry, I'm the
Urdu.
host here, not you. All right, man, come on.
I'm putting you on the spot. I'm
I
sorry.
guess so. All right,
But
but no,
you'll
go
have
ahead.
some time to think about your answer.
Yeah.
All right. So I would say, like I feel like most people probably know this, but if not, like I'm not sure. I feel like poetry a lot of times like it actually takes a lot of research. Um Especially if we're talking about like poetry revolving around history and obviously for the ill bit it involves a lot of research. Obviously I did say like I'm inspired by like maybe like a line or something that like a Milan has said like in a speech and I'll like write that down really quickly. But then that like sort of makes me want to go do more research. And then once I do that, I feel like it just opens up so many doors or like things in history that like you just didn't know about before. Or maybe it's like presented in like a cool, unique way. Um, so it allows me to just like sort of like constantly continue to learn more about like the Ilbit and like the prophet and It's sort of like a ocean that like never that you'll never be satiated from. You
Satiated.
know, so
Yes. Okay.
satiated. Sorry. It's kind of late at night, so I
No,
don't
it's all good. Go ahead.
forgive me.
Go ahead.
um so I feel like when I had started off writing poetry, I did not um like from where I've started to where I am now, I feel like alhamdulillah, and it's because of like the blessings and the duas of writing poetry for the ill bit that I feel like I've gotten closer to them. And obviously there's like a lot of work that I don't publish online, things that are just for me,
Yeah.
right? Poetry that I don't really want other people to like,
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
it's just for me and the ill bit.
Yeah.
um and I feel like sometimes like poetry like duas can sort of just be like a conversation that like you're having with like a specific person or for the specific people that you're writing for. um and so it creates sort of like also like a spiritual connection as well. And I feel like writing is so personal and so intimate, sort of like duas and praying, that inevitably it will start changing and shaping your relationship um with it a little bit. So
Yeah. No, no. So I mean, it sounds like through poetry, you can take the information you've learned when doing your research, on the Elbit, and through poetry, you can kind of basically connect with them as if you're having a conversation, as if it's somebody who's right in front of you, and you're writing down your thoughts and feelings, based off of what you've learned, and you're translating that into a poetic, narrative as well. And
yeah,
so,
exactly. While also keeping in mind like the aesthetics, like the rhyme, the meter, if you want to like go more into that as well.
yeah.
But yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, no. So and so it's what's interesting is I totally understand like the idea of having written stuff down and writing poetry, but then stuff that's just for you and the Ahlbith, right? So obviously, this, and probably lots of people know. I'm I'm a dabbler in the poets, or in poetry, in the poetic arts.
Hey, can I also just
Obviously,
interrupt? Can
oh
I just
god,
interrupt you here?
yes.
You wrote a fire poem about Imam Ali in English.
Oh yeah, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, and the last line was amazing. So
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, no, no, no. So, well, certainly, I'm a dabbler in many things. Certainly not fully diving into it the same way that you would. But no, I also have many a poems that I've started, or like where I'll sit down and write things, and obviously it never really goes anywhere. It's like basically the thoughts that I have, and so I can completely like empathize is not the word that I'm looking for right now, but like I can
relate.
relate, parallel exactly that sort of thought and feeling. And so I think for me, just to kind of respond to your uh, statement from earlier, it's the ability to kind of take what is being said in the poem, and just if you like sit and think about like what you're saying, right? Who you're addressing a lot of the times, you're addressing some of the greatest figures in the history of Islam. You have to kind of be fully focused to like really think about like man like in for example like this one noha. It's an old pretty old school noha. It goes salvato salam ape ya Fatima Zahra, right? Like you're straight up addressing Bibi Fatima, like you're just like as if you're just talking to her, as if she's just like
Yeah,
the like this elder person that's in front of you, and you're talking to her about how you're spending the next 5 minutes of recitation just giving her bursa,
yeah,
for her and for her family. And so you know for me it kind of humbles me in a sense where like I'm actually just a very low figure trying to do big things way out of my league things, but in a sense, it basically should remind you, like, at least for me, it's like I've done nothing compared to what the Ahlul Bayt have done, what the family and the friends of the Prophet and of Imam Ali, Imam Hussein, all the entire Ahlul Bayt, what they've had to go through and whatnot. And so for that, it's just, for me, it's the humility, I guess, that you automatically see when you're really focused on what the poems are saying. And so
I
that's kind
think
of
that
the biggest thing.
I love that, and I think that that's Noha, right? That you
Yeah,
were mentioning. I think that's such a perfect example and manifestation of like what you just said, um, and what you just said too. Like I think that like for all creatives, and when I say creatives, I sort of use this loosely because I also think like lecturers, artists, right? They're all creatives. Um, to have that sincerity whenever you're doing anything, even if you're like maybe not like a creative, and like even if you're just like giving water, like the baroque, like
yeah,
whatever you do, like having that sincerity is so important. And to sometimes that can get lost, especially I feel like in this day and age of
yeah.
social media and clout chasing.
Do anything for the clout.
um
Doing it for the clout. Oh
you
man.
know, but like then we also have to remind ourselves that like wait, what are we doing? And I'm not saying that like I or whatever am not above that, right? We all fall into these traps.
Yeah, for sure.
um but sometimes like these things, or even listening to podcasts or listening to lectures, right, it serves sometimes as like a good reminder that we need to revisit our intentions and like since purify them again. So yeah,
Yeah,
I love that.
no, no, 100%. And just on that note, we'll kind of go into our final topic for the evening. So we talked a little bit about what role poetry has and what roles it's played, and kind of the different organizations that can help to change it. How do you envision our communities, like either here in New Jersey, or just in general the Shia community in America? How do you encompass a future? Looking like in our communities with the acceptance and perhaps the further empowerment of English poetry, or even like changes in trends with poetry like regarding Urdu poetry. How do you anticipate that could look like?
So I can't really speak too much about like the trends in Urdu poetry just because I have not been trained, nor do I keep up as much
Sure, sure.
with that. Um, but I will say like I'm somebody who likes to be very optimistic, but I will say that um like unfortunately I feel like what I am seeing is that there needs to be more space, I guess, in our communities and in our masjids to have spaces for English poetry or for those who would like to express English poetry. I do feel like there is a sentiment, and I will be obviously as an English poet, I would
Yeah, man.
sort of
Same.
disagree with that sentiment, which is, English poetry, quote unquote, doesn't hit as hard or hit as hard on your heart, I guess, as Urdu poetry. But I feel like you just need to find the right, maybe poets, or the right, yeah, find the right poets, um, who will sort of draw those emotions out of you. And I will say that there still needs to be a lot of work done in English poetry, right? To sort of bring it up to that level. There's so much like Urdu poetry out there. Obviously, English. I wouldn't say is just developing because there are a lot of like people like Ali Fadil, who have done a lot of work for many years on this, and so many other reciters as well. Um, but I do think that there needs to be more space for English poetry when it comes to the spaces of our traditional, like the traditional spaces of Azadari.
Yeah.
I think that the trend that I'm sort of seeing now is that we have space for English poetry outside of the masjid,
Yeah.
unfortunately, in like third party spaces, or even like there's been like all English jaluses that have happened, um or like open mics, right? That's something that I really like to foster, like a community of on my Instagram. Like it's not just a platform for myself, but a platform to support other Shias and other Muslim artists and poets, and having like open mics and stuff like that. But I
Yeah.
think that it would be really cool and really amazing, to sort of see those like third party spaces, and those traditional spaces like merge, and um, just see that emergence would be really great.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit it on the head here, where it's definitely has taken a lot of great shape in spaces outside of the traditional majlis and masjids. But I think you're right. I think that as there's more and more of us Shia Americans. I don't even know how the right way to say this is, but I guess we'll say Shia, or American Shias. I guess as we kind of continue to grow, I think that it'll be more and more incorporated into regular programming. If I guess I'll plug this past month just at Astana Zera, like on this past Wednesday for Imam Hassan Shahadat. Brother, Muhammad Ali Naqvi, aka Ali Bhai, he was actually reciting Tahir Adil poetry, right? So he actually like that was his dad used to like talk, always give a speech before the Majlis started, and then he came and recited poetry from Tahir Adil, and so I think that that sort of thing is going to develop over time. But until it becomes a little bit more mainstream, or there's people that are born and raised, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it, in America that are kind of more involved, or like the primary people in charge of running programs like that. Until that happens, it'll probably be secondary. But well, until then, there's always things like space in order to deal with poetry space. So lots to look forward to, though. Batul,
Yeah,
thank you
alhamdulillah.
for your thoughts. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for your time. I hope that our viewers watching at home, can resonate a little bit with what we've talked about, and inshallah, I hope you get some people reach out to you, which hopefully you'll let me know. But inshallah, thank you again. I thought this was wonderful. I don't know what were your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think this was amazing. Like, thank you so much for having me. And also if like I offended anyone or like made any mistakes throughout this, just, please forgive me. But I think that this is great, and I'm also honored to be like the first female guest on this podcast too. So I think NJSSL is doing like a great job of like really fostering like a community too, and like now like, I mean, obviously it's like in person, but now also like offline, online. So just keep doing amazing things.
Thank you. We'll try. The only mistake that I caught you making was that you mentioned a bunch of people before you mentioned me in terms of inspiration. But but that's okay. We'll let that one slide. Meanwhile, thank you everybody for watching. Alhamdulillah, we're blessed to have you guys, and Alhamdulillah, we're blessed to have the presence of the one and only Batul in Pursuit. That is at Batul in Pursuit, I believe, on Instagram. Do follow her, and do follow the NJSSL page. And inshallah, look out for future NJSSL reflections and cutting Redge content as we continue to venture forward ahead of our upcoming basketball season. Until then, folks, have a great day. We'll see you real soon. Take care, and Shabbat Khair.
Shabbat.